Today's headline is Origin of Yankee. First Yankees were in the colonial forces. The subheadline says, How New Englanders acquired the title is not definitely known. Even the tune Yankee Doodle was used as martial music by the British. It says, in one sense or another, the word Yankee with two E's or Yankee with a Y is to be found in British literature for at least 2 centuries, and it is pretty clearly defined. But the origin of its application to the New Englander is the despair of philologists. From time to time, for more than 100 years, explanations have been advanced of this use of the word, but though plausible, they have not passed beyond the stage of speculation or conjecture. The earliest known instance of its use by an American is that cited by the late Dr. Trumbull in 1857 from a poem written by an American but published in London in 1765. The date of this instance of the use of the word, together with the ordinary accompaniment of doodle or doodle-doo, an Old English refrain, renders plausible the theory that the word Yankee was brought to this country by the British regulars, who came hither to fight the Canadians in the last great war with France. That the tune of Yankee Doodle as martial music was played by the English as early as 1775 appears by the accounts of the Battle of Lexington, from which time tradition certainly connects it with the tune we know by that name. It is also certain that the phrase Yankee Doodle appears in an American stage play in 1767, and that the Yankee Doodle song was the martial music of the British forces that came to Boston in 1768 to quell the disturbances provoked by the Stamp Act. This tune presumably was the same that was played at Lexington 7 years later. Soon after the commencement of hostilities in the American Revolution, the word Yankee and the tune of Yankee Doodle seem to have got a foothold here, for as early as February 16, 1776, it is recorded that an American privateer called the Yankee Hero, which about 4 months later was captured by the British, had already brought a valuable prize into Newburyport, and upon the capitulation of Burgoyne the next year, the victorious army saluted the conquered troops of Burgoyne with the tune of Yankee Doodle as they proceeded for the American camp near Fish Creek to take up the line of march to Cambridge. I venture the opinion that both the tune and the words may yet be found to have been one of the ephemeral airs popular in London, which the soldiers of Loud and Abercrombie or Amherst took with them on their departure for America. One of Boston's bright scholars, noted for his perseverance and the wide range and thoroughness of his philological researches, has been inquiring into this subject with ardor, and we may hope that ere long both the verses and the music of Yankee Doodle, which Rear Admiral Preble calls a musical vagabond and a literary bohemian, have been traced to their original starting place. Though applied by our enemies in derision, it seems to have been adopted by the Americans in a spirit of bravado after they had won their first signal victories. Thus in the ballad, The Fall of Burgoyne, supposed to have been composed by Reverend Wheeler Case in 1778, the rhymester exclaims, Prisoners to rebels, Yankees too, O mortifying stroke! If the above conjecture as to the first application of the word is correct, and those who were first called Yankees were the rank and file of the colonial forces by whom the invaders were confronted, it follows that the name is not exclusively applicable to persons of purely English descent. On the contrary, it is impossible to fairly apportion the honor and glory of political and military achievement in the American Revolution without awarding an important share to those whose names and family traditions belong to Ireland as well as to Great Britain and the continent of Europe. Let anyone try to imagine what the history of Boston would be without counting the descendants of the Huguenots, the Bowdens, the Reveres, the Faneuils, the Chardins, the Brimmers, the Owenots, and the Sigourneys, or how the story of the Revolution would read without the mention of a Molyneux or Knox, a Stark, a Sullivan, a Bowden, or a Revere. And he will be convinced that an important ingredient of the Yankee character has been overlooked by the historian who imagines that it was wholly deduced from indigenous antecedents. For note of Huguenot stock, who wrote the lyrics of liberty, and Paine, the Quaker agnostic who eloquently proclaimed the rights of man, and Alexander Hamilton, the West Indian, of Scotch and Huguenot extraction, who inspired the federal Constitution, contributed quite as much to the symmetry of the ideal of Yankee as did Samuel Adams, the chief promoter of independence, and the last of the Puritans. Mankind are perverse in their notions of what constitutes the type of a race or class. Look, for instance, at the typical Yankee as universally portrayed in the illustrated periodicals of the day. Whoever saw or heard described by a credible witness such a being in New England? It was not until our northern armies during the Civil War had penetrated the rural districts of Tennessee and Kentucky that the prototype of this idea was known to exist anywhere except in imagination. Yet the honest fellow in the swallowtail coat, the bell-crowned hat, the goatee, and strapped pantaloons was so far from the northern standard that he had never seen the Stars and Stripes, never celebrated a 4th of July, and had no traditions to recount of British aggression except the Battle of New Orleans. Some have supposed that the peculiar intonation and pronunciation of New Englanders in certain rural districts are peculiar Yankee characteristics, but those who so imagine have probably never talked with the high-bred Londoner, nor the mere Cockney, but the rural English gentleman who asks you to smoke with him or to lend him a pound, nor with the true Virginia gentleman of old family and high breeding who pronounces in the same manner. There is good reason for believing that at the period of the first English immigration, such was the accepted pronunciation among the most cultivated people of England, and the fact that it has been retained through tradition only proves long descent under such circumstances of independent ease as to have prevented any interruption by strangers ready to impart new peculiarities of speech as a sort of phonetic slang. In the average New Englander, there may be such a combination of peculiarities as to render him distinct. But it is not because the race is derived from a single stock for which these peculiarities are transmitted. The unity of character, purpose, taste, genius even, springs from long enjoyment of equal opportunity, free competition, harmonious cooperation, and above all, from the enlightenment which springs from unrestricted coeducation. The lesson which one history teaches, beyond all fear of contradiction, is expressed in the wise aphorism of Lowell. It was in making education not only common to all, but in a certain sense compulsory on all, that the destiny of the free republics of America was practically settled. This article was written by Abner C. Goodall. This story comes from the great state of Massachusetts, being reported in the Boston Sunday Globe of May 12, 1901. Thank you for joining us today. If you want to continue to uncover all of America's lost and forgotten history, then remember before you leave to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and remember to like and comment below. And we will see you next time on Americana Archives.